we cut across to more breaking news coming in. Indian Army sources have informed Republic that disengagement between India and China in Depsang and Demchok is complete now. Coordinated patrolling is to start soon on both sides. Ground commanders will continue to hold talks. Exchange of sweets will also happen tomorrow on the occasion of Diwali. It's a big success after 4 years with both military talks and diplomatic negotiations that have led to this day. And Indian Army sources now telling Republic that disengagement between India and China in Depsang and Demchok are complete. Coordinated patrolling will start on both sides. Let me cut across to Shavan Sen joining us from the newsroom to take us through the details of what more we are picking up on this.
Well, in fact, three quick takeaways of what we know so far. One, as far as disengagement in two areas, that's in Demchok and Depsang, that has already been completed. This is after the agreement that was signed by both sides just ahead of Prime Minister's visit to Russia for the BRICS summit. The second is with regards to the patrolling. Remember, patrolling points in 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14. These are the patrolling points where the coordination patrolling will take place. Just to put this into perspective, these are the same very areas that were considered as the friction points from both sides. So since January 2020, there hasn't been patrolling across these very lines, the patrolling points, which we are being told it's going to resume in the next few days. In fact, after the disengagement was completed, which basically involved removing of the temporary structures that were created by both sides, Chinese as well as the Indians, they have been removed. The prefabricated tents that were created, they have also been removed from both sides. Now we are being told that the cross verification has already taken place, which is completed late last night, and now the patrolling process is essentially going to begin. So the significant aspect is that these are the two areas that we're talking about, Depsang as well as Demchok. Earlier Panging, so that disengagement was already completed. This basically makes it at least three areas that are now perhaps going back to the 2020 position. There are other friction points that still remain, but that is the reason why ground level commanders are going to continue with their talks to ensure that the remaining areas, also the friction areas, there is an agreement to that.
Absolutely, Shavan, and fact remains that it has taken a lot to reach this day from ground level talks of armies on both sides, and of course diplomatic conversations, and not to forget the recent meeting that happened between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping, that this day has finally arrived after 4 years, where we are watching disengagement at the LAC. Do take us through how difficult a journey it has been. Of course, understanding that China cannot always be trusted, but this still is a breakthrough.
Well, this was certainly a work in progress with the working management committee that was put in place. So you've had on the military level as well as diplomatic level, at both ways basically looking at whether at all they can go back to the 2020 position. Just to tell our viewers, now these are the two very areas where the patrolling wasn't really taking place. So there was a friction area, at least multiple patrolling points. In a short while from now, we're going to put out the details of the multiple patrolling points, roughly about 7 to 8 patrolling points in these very areas, which were considered to be the friction points, and that is the reason why they were not carrying out the patrolling. Now that has changed, and as part of the new agreement, you would have coordinated patrolling that would be done. When I say coordinated patrolling, it essentially means that both sides will be resuming to their old position and carry out the patrolling. Now, just to help our viewers understand, in Panging, so remember, it is about the patrolling to a certain finger position. That finger position was altered after the clash that took place, particularly after the Galwan clash that took place. Both sides could not really carry out their respective patrolling. That now would be changing in the days to come. You would have the same very position that was taken. The problem basically emanates from the fact that you do not have a clear boundary demarcation, and that is the reason why you would have both the armies carrying out their patrolling with some amount of friction that still exists on the ground.
All right, Kashavan, do stay on with us as we try and get more voices. Retired Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni with us on the phone line. Sir, big development here. The disengagement process that is complete. Your word.
The development which has taken place, because disengagements positively, they without fail lead to reducing tension along the LAC. And primarily both at these places, what we call them as Depsang and Demchok, where you will find over a period of time that we would be able to go back to the old patrolling, that is between patrol point 10, 11, 12, 13, 13 alpha, which is all leading up to Depsang. And when we talk about Demchok along the Chardingla, I think the modalities, as we all get to hear, is only from hearsay as yet. But actually, frankly speaking, on the ground, it makes a world of a difference, because there are various ways. First, of course, we saw how you had buffer zones created, resulting in both the armies staying away and no fist fights taking place. But maybe in this particular context, when we talk about coordinated patrolling, it could well be on specific days that the patrolling will be there. It will be there during the daytime. The strength would be laid down, say, not more than 15 at any point of time. Certain this thing that there will be nothing will be constructed, nothing will be left behind, no telltale signs to be left behind by either side. Each side informing one another that it will be already pre-decided. And of course, the various border personnel meetings which are taking place over there, ensuring that should there be any certain things to be tied up, will be tied up. Very important, because all these things lead to, first is the trust. The trust that was missing all this time, over a period of time. I think once the trust develops between the two sides, we will slowly and suddenly find normalcy returning. And once normalcy returns, is so much good for the two countries. And in that lies how to ensure, most important is that at no point of time, whatever we decide upon, whether we decide upon the days, the dates, the time, the strength, it should not be violated. It should not, nobody should take law in his hand. And that's something, and whatever the agreements take place, or whatever the understanding that occurs with the ground troops over there, they must be adhered, respected, because once you are adhering to the agreement, you are respecting each other, you'll find there will be a trust that will develop, which will lead to something positive. And that positiveness between the two countries, the two neighbors, is important. I'm saying it should be much better than the status quo ante 2020, because the status quo ante 2020 did lead in between also, before that also, to a certain amount of squabbling, talking to one another, or fist fighting. All that must be totally avoided. I am 100% sure that all these things will be taken care, and troops on ground, commanders on ground will ensure that normalcy, when I say normalcy, it means total normalcy and respect for each other, ensuring that the agreement is strictly adhered to. And that is what I would call a positive development. And that is what will lead to disengagement, leading subsequently to the de-escalation, and finally the de-induction, which can take on, as we have decided, maybe a third phase, and slowly and steadily. But most important, disengagement leading to peace along the LAC. Yeah.
Right. Sir, many thanks for speaking to us. We'll also play into this reaction by the Chinese ambassador on this latest development. Let's listen in.
In regard of the very important meeting between President Xi and Prime Minister Modi, just now I had made a very, brief in my speech about their important visit. Now that the two leaders have reached many important understandings, that will be the guidelines for the further development of our relations of our two countries. And I just hope that under the guidance of this consensus, our relations will be moving forward smoothly in the future, and our relations will not be restricted or interrupted by specific disagreements between our two sides. Because as two neighboring countries, it's quite natural we have some differences. The most important thing is how to handle and solve these differences. I think this is very important. Now the two leaders, their meetings have set a very good example for us how to handle these differences.